If you're curious what 8 truths this story will reveal, listen until the end. It's important to go through it slowly, because one part might open your eyes and help you. And if even just one part stirs something in you, a memory, a feeling, even a quiet thought, don't keep it inside. Share it in the comments. Someone else might need to hear they're not alone. We think we recognize others' flaws, but in truth, we're seeing our own shadow. There's a moment you don't notice until it's too late. Someone walks too slowly in front of you. Someone else is loud in a quiet room. Someone laughs a little too long at their own joke. And before you've even processed the thought, your body has already reacted. A clench in the jaw, a subtle roll of the eyes, a hard blink that feels heavier than it should. You tell yourself it's just irritation. But Jung would say, it's a revelation. You think you're annoyed because of them. Their laziness, their ego, their volume. But irritation is rarely about the surface. It's a signal, and the body feels it before the mind admits it. The person you're reacting to? They're doing something your own psyche doesn't allow. You're angry at their freedom, not their behavior. And what you call a flaw might just be a buried part of yourself trying to speak. He remembers this one colleague. Carefree, slow-talking, unbothered by deadlines. It drove him mad. Every time she took her time answering emails or asked for an extension, he felt heat rise in his chest. His breathing changed. He'd get sharp in meetings, hiding it behind efficiency. She's just unprofessional, he'd tell himself. But deep inside, there was a whisper. How does she get to be that relaxed, while you burn to prove your worth? As a child, he was praised for being fast, efficient, always ready. His stillness wasn't encouraged, it was corrected. And so he learned to sprint, not on tracks, but through every expectation. Years passed. The pace never slowed. So when someone else moves gently through the world, his body rebels. Not because they're wrong, but because he never got permission to be like that. Carl Jung called this the shadow, the denied, repressed part of the self. Not evil, not broken, just unclaimed. And the shadow doesn't speak in words. It speaks through triggers, through clenched fists, through sarcasm, through the sharpness you can't explain. It shows up not when you're trying to be authentic, but when you're trying hardest to control yourself. He once dated someone deeply emotional. She cried during movies, during arguments, during silence. At first, he was patient, supportive even. But over time, something hardened. He started withdrawing, subtly invalidating her. You're too sensitive. Can't we just talk calmly? The truth? He wasn't annoyed with her. He was terrified by her. Because she embodied something he had buried years ago, the right to feel deeply, to weep, to need. Her vulnerability touched the wound where his had been shut. And so it is with all of us. We react harshly to people who express what we've denied. The loud person triggers your fear of being visible. The needy one touches your shame about dependency. The confident one mirrors your lost courage. What you hate in others, you often silenced in yourself. This is why Jung warned, your strongest judgments aren't objective. They're autobiographical. They are confessions of pain you haven't yet dared to name. Next time you feel your blood rise in someone's presence, don't look outward. Look inward. Ask yourself, why does this bother me so much? And then, go deeper. What if this is the part of me I locked away to survive? The body always knows. You flinch, you stiffen, your shoulders climb to your ears. That's not just annoyance. That's your shadow saying, look at me. I've been here all along. Because the truth is, you're not angry at them. You're angry that they get to be what you had to kill in yourself. Some people don't talk fast because they're confident. They talk fast because they're afraid of the silence. She enters the room like a spark, smiling wide, eyes darting, laughter arriving before the sentence lands. She fills the space within seconds. Jokes, stories, light touches on the arm. On the surface, she seems magnetic, the kind of person who lights up the room. But if you pay attention, really pay attention, you'll see the tremble behind the rhythm, the breath that doesn't settle, the hands that keep adjusting, the pace that never rests. And if you're sensitive enough, you'll realize, this isn't confidence. This is escape. Carl Jung would have called this defended energy, a body moving faster than it can feel, a nervous system outrunning its own vulnerability. It's not an act, not consciously performed. It's a survival strategy rooted deep in the psyche, built in moments when stillness became dangerous. He remembers a friend like this. Always on, always charming, always performing. One day, he asked her a quiet question, nothing too serious, and for the first time, she paused. Just for a second. And in that second, her whole face changed. Her eyes dropped. Her shoulders sagged. A breath escaped like it had been held for years. Then, instantly, she laughed again, shook her head, changed the subject. That was the moment he saw it. The speed wasn't natural. It was protective. The body knows silence is where truth lives. But for some, silence was never safe. Maybe, in childhood, silence meant tension, a parent's mood shifting without explanation. Maybe it meant abandonment. Maybe silence was the space where shame grew loudest. So instead, they learned to fill the void. With words, with stories, with sound. This is why Jung emphasized the role of the unconscious in physical expression. What we think of as personality is often a protective pattern. Talkative doesn't always mean open. Quick doesn't always mean strong. The speed at which someone exists might be the clearest evidence of what they're running from. He's seen it in meetings, the overtalker who dominates every pause. He's seen it in social events, the one who jokes before emotion can rise. He's seen it in himself, answering too quickly, over-explaining, overcorrecting, just to avoid being seen without a script. And here's the truth no one tells you. Confidence doesn't rush. Real presence doesn't sprint. The most grounded people speak slowly, not because they're careful, but because they're not afraid of what might surface. Next time someone speaks too fast, too much, too soon, don't assume they're strong. And when you catch yourself doing the same, don't shame it. Just notice, what am I afraid might enter the silence if I slow down? Because the body isn't just speaking fast. It's begging you to listen before it burns out trying to be okay. People rarely lie with their bodies, but often with their words. He says he's fine. The sentence arrives quickly, like a well-rehearsed line. But between the I and the fine, there's a breath that catches, just slightly. Barely noticeable, unless you're attuned to it. His smile follows, practiced. His shoulders stay lifted, but the fingers twitch. His voice tries to sound even, but there's a tremble in the throat. And in that split second, in the pause he didn't plan, something real leaks through. Carl Jung often emphasized the difference between conscious expression and unconscious truth. The body, he said, speaks first. Words are what we curate. The body is what we cannot filter. And in the modern world, full of social scripts and polished small talk, the only honest part of a conversation may be the silence between phrases. There's a moment when she answers a question about her past with a laugh, but her eyes drift elsewhere. She says it wasn't a big deal, yet her jaw locks for a second too long. You won't find pain in her words, but you'll see it in the breath she holds before speaking. The mind may choose to forget. The body rarely does. Jung would say, in every silence between words, the shadow speaks. The trauma, the longing, the defense. We're trained to listen to content, but what if we listened to timing? To gaps? To the places where someone almost said something, then didn't? And more importantly, do you hear it in yourself? You're rushed, yes, when you wanted to pause. You're polite, I'm okay, when your spine was curling inward. Your careful joke right after your chest tightened. The pause is a map, not to what they want you to know, but to what they can't help but reveal. Not every smile is kindness. Some smiles are fear in disguise. She smiles before the joke is even finished. She laughs when someone interrupts her. She nods through discomfort. If you didn't look closely, you'd say she's kind, soft, easy to be around. But her smile is too quick, too wide, too constant. It's not warmth. It's armor. Carl Jung spoke of emotional reflexes, bodily habits formed not from personality, but from pain. This kind of smile isn't a choice. It's a script, written early in childhood, where compliance was rewarded and resistance was punished with silence, distance, or shame. A child learns fast. If you smile, they don't leave. He remembers sitting in a family gathering, too young to understand the dynamics, but old enough to feel the tension. His aunt made a cruel comment. Everyone laughed. He smiled too, even though something shrank in his chest. That was the moment it began, the nervous system deciding that smiling would be his safest shape. Years later, in meetings or relationships, the pattern stayed. Smile first. Soften the blow. Be the one who calms, not stirs. But behind that smile was always a tightening, in the jaw, in the back of the neck, in the gut. Jung would call this a compromise formation, a visible behavior masking an inner conflict. The world sees friendliness, but the body stores the cost, chronic tension, fatigue, emotional confusion. Because if you smile every time you're scared, one day you forget what joy really feels like. So the next time you notice yourself smiling when something hurts, pause. Ask, is this comfort? Or is this survival? And when someone smiles too fast, don't assume they're happy. They might just be remembering what it took to stay loved. When a person stops performing, their real face begins to speak. He's in the room, but no one is looking at him. The conversation has shifted elsewhere. Attention has floated towards someone else. And in that flicker of unawareness, something happens. His posture loosens. His eyebrows drop. The curve of his mouth fades into neutrality. The tightness in his hands disappears. For a moment, he is not being seen, and therefore, not being someone. And in that moment, his real face appears. Carl Jung would say this is when the mask slips, not by force, but by absence. We think people show their truth in words, but often they show it in silence. When the performance pauses, what remains is the unedited self. It's in how their body folds, how the breath slows, how their gaze drifts somewhere unguarded. This self that was shaped for others dissolves, and what remains is closer to shadow, not dark, not evil, just unpracticed. He remembers a train ride, sitting across from a woman who, when her friend spoke, nodded cheerfully, smiled politely, kept her body upright. But when her friend looked away, her face collapsed, not dramatically, but deeply. The muscles fell. Her shoulders dropped. Her lips parted slightly, as if the smile had exhausted her. That, he realized, was her actual expression. The one she only wore when no one needed her to wear anything. We all have that face. The one we never see in the mirror. The one that emerges in waiting rooms, behind closed doors, or during elevator rides. And that face carries the truth, not because it's more real, but because it's less observed. Jung believed that we lose parts of ourselves in adaptation. What the world sees is often what we've rehearsed, but what we become in moments of invisibility. That's the version not filtered through fear or performance. So observe gently, in yourself, in others, not to judge, but to witness. Because the quietest face might be the one that's been trying to speak your truth all along. What you say you'll never do again isn't a decision. It's a scar. I never ask for help. I always keep it together. I don't need anyone. These sentences sound like strength. But listen closer. They carry tension, not peace. There's no calm in them. Just tightness in the chest, a stiffness in the neck, a body that braces as if still inside the very moment that vow was born. Carl Jung believed that many adult patterns are childhood conclusions dressed up as values. When a child is shamed for crying, he doesn't decide he's strong. He promises himself he'll never cry again. When a child is ignored after asking for something, she doesn't learn patience, she learns silence. And that lesson, once etched into the nervous system, becomes law. He recalls a man who always smiled when people let him down. I never expect anything, the man would say. But his hands told a different story. They clenched under the table, knuckles white. That wasn't acceptance. That was a vow. I'll never need again, so I can never be disappointed again. It wasn't peace. It was a protective wall that felt like personality. The body stores these contracts. Shoulders curl inward when someone offers help. Breath shortens when vulnerability approaches. The smile tightens when love tries to enter. The person doesn't resist. They've just forgotten how to receive. Jung's concept of the shadow reminds us that these vows are not choices. They are defense mechanisms buried so deep we mistake them for identity. But healing doesn't mean breaking the vow. It means understanding it, meeting the child who made it, and whispering, "You don't have to protect me anymore." So next time you hear yourself say, "I never," or "I always," pause. Ask yourself not why you believe it, but when you first started. Because strength isn't about being untouchable. If you want to know who someone really is, watch what they fear. He flinches when someone raises their voice, even if it's not directed at him. He over-explains when he's misunderstood. He keeps the room clean, answers messages quickly, says yes before thinking. Not because he's organized, but because disorder scares him. Disappointment terrifies him. Silence makes him sweat. His daily rituals aren't just habits. They're symptoms. Traces of a fear map buried under years of appearing fine. Carl Jung taught that fear isn't just a reaction, it's a compass. It points not to the threat in front of you, but to the wound behind you. Fear is old. It doesn't form in the present. It echoes from moments when something essential was taken, ignored, or crushed. And the body, he believed, never forgets the coordinates. She avoids eye contact with people who admire her. She's not shy. She's terrified of being truly seen. Compliments make her withdraw. They just want something, she says. But it's not skepticism. It's memory. Because once, someone praised her before hurting her. And now, even kindness feels like danger. Her spine stiffens. Her smile breaks rhythm. Her gaze drops. And none of it is conscious. Jung's shadow isn't just the hidden shame. It's also the hidden pain. And fear is the flashlight that reveals it. You don't fear public speaking, you fear rejection. You don't fear losing control. You fear remembering the last time you had none. Every fear is a page from an unwritten story, still stuck in the body, still shaping every choice you make without knowing. So instead of numbing fear, listen to it. Not as a weakness, but as a message. Ask, what does this fear know that I've forgotten? What truth is my nervous system trying to keep away from me? The moment someone describes another, they begin to confess themselves. He says, she's too dramatic. He says it with a shrug, but his voice tightens. His eyebrows lift, as if to distance himself from the very possibility. But beneath his tone is a discomfort, the kind that doesn't belong to the person he's describing. It belongs to him. Carl Jung would call this projection, not accusation, but confession disguised as observation. We don't just speak about others. We reveal the parts of ourselves we can't hold. When someone criticizes, mocks, or pathologizes another, the words may be about them, but the roots lie within. The traits we judge most fiercely in others often point to something unresolved in us. He remembers calling his friend needy. She had asked for reassurance. Nothing dramatic, just a moment of emotional honesty. But it hit something in him. His shoulders tensed. He responded too quickly, too coolly. Only later did he realize. Her need made visible a part of himself he had shut down. The part that once asked and didn't get. The part that learned early to need less to be loved more. Projection isn't always harsh. Sometimes it's envy masked as distance. Admiration diluted with dismissal. He's so full of himself, we say, but maybe we were never allowed to feel full. She's too emotional. But maybe we had to bury our emotions just to be safe. The nervous system joins in this projection. The jaw tenses, hands fidget, the eyes look away, as if trying to separate from the shadow that has surfaced. Because to truly witness someone else's trait and not feel threatened, you must have made peace with it in yourself. Most haven't. Jung reminded us that our language about others is a mirror, not a window. It doesn't just describe the outside world. It sketches the map of our inner landscape, especially the parts we'd rather not visit. So the next time someone tells you who they think another person is, listen for what they're trying not to say about themselves. And more importantly, next time your tongue sharpens, pause. Ask, what part of me just flinched? Because the truth is, when you speak about others, your shadow listens. And it knows whether you're speaking from awareness or avoidance.